Welcome back. I'm here again today with my grandpa's old 79 GMC pickup. This is also at the request of somebody that has watched one of my other videos. They ask what happens in a carbureted vehicle if you let it sit for an extended period of time. So I'm going to bring you under the hood, show you what's going on there, and we'll talk about what that is and what the normal starting procedure on a vehicle that's sat for a long period of time is. Alright, so I already have the air cleaner off, and I'm going to talk a little bit about a couple different things. One of the big problems that you run into with a carbureted engine with today's fuel is not made for carbureted engines. It has kind of a, I believe it has a lower vaporizing point, so it actually evaporates out of a carburetor quicker than what old fuel used to, which means that you will have a dry carburetor much faster than you did in the old days. Now, back when I first started driving carbureted vehicles, these Edelbrock carburetors will go dry after they sit for a while. When I first started, it used to take them about a week and a half, 2 weeks. And if you let a vehicle sit longer than that, this carburetor would dry out. And the reason that is you've got here a vent and here a vent. So as this sits, the gas vapors are just evaporating up out of this carburetor. So that was back then. It was like 2 weeks you would go, and if you had an Edelbrock style carburetor, you would have to deal with you would have an empty carburetor at that point. Now with today's modern fuel, that's cut down to probably about 3 or 4 days. This carburetor will be totally dry and have to go through the same process as if it sits for a month after 3 or 4 days. Now, there may still be a little bit of fuel in the accelerator pumps, but it's not going to be enough to actually start the engine on. So I'm just gonna angle you in here. Alright, so we can see our little brass pieces down there. Those are the accelerator pumps. If there's still fuel in that circuit, they will spray when I pump the throttle. And there actually is. But there was only enough for that one good solid spray, and that's not going to be enough to start the engine on. Now, I haven't gone through all the different circuitry in the carburetor yet, but as this thing sits, all the passages in here where fuel would normally sit have dried out and are empty. So what that means is we've got our fuel pump mounted on the side of our engine. So if I back this out, here's your alternator. On the small block Chevy, the fuel pump is right here. I have a filter off of like a late 90s Chevy truck on this one. I was putting those on everything I owned for a while, so this one has one as well. And so yeah. Now this has not really sat long enough for me to be worried about rust buildup in the line, but if I was, I would actually pull this line off of here and I would pump some fuel through the line to clear the line and make sure there's no rust or anything in the actual fuel line. Now this engine mounted pump has to pick fuel up from all the way back in the tank. That's several feet of fuel line it has to suck fuel through before it actually gets up to the carburetor. Then after it gets up to the carburetor, we have to fill the float bowls to roughly that level right about there. So what I'm gonna do, you've seen in the other video, I actually had you inside pump where I was pumping the gas. I think I showed you a foot view of pumping the gas pedal. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. But anyway, as this moves, I am pumping the gas pedal inside, and I'll do that while I'm cranking it. Now what you're about to see is one of the reasons why starters on old vehicles used to go bad, and they just don't anymore. But I'm going to set you up right here, and I'll get inside and I'll crank this thing, and it's going to take probably at least 15 seconds of cranking. The general rule is you don't want to crank on a starter motor for more than 30 seconds. If it takes more than 30 seconds, I'm going to keep cranking because I just am. But here we go. Alright, so this one actually had enough in those accelerator pumps. It's hot today. It's like 80 degrees. It's probably cooled off a little bit from there, but it's like it's warm today. So this isn't a cold start even though the engine hasn't been run. I guess it kind of is because it's still got another 100 degrees to warm up. But it is hot today, so that's probably part of the reason why that was enough fuel to actually kick the engine over. I am getting destroyed by mosquitoes. These Edelbrock carburetors seem to be the worst about fuel evaporation. Hollies and Quadrajets don't seem to evaporate out as bad or as quick as what these do, but after they sit for quite a while, they also lose all their fuel. So you'll have to crank the engine. The fact that this one did kick over and run for 5 seconds or whatever it was actually helped this engine get fuel up to the carburetor, because that fast pumping moves the fuel a lot faster than if you were just at a cranking speed. So there you go. If you let your carbureted vehicle sit, it's going to take a while to start, unless you have an electric pump. If you have an electric pump, it pumps the fuel from the tank while you sit there and wait, and then it should just crank up pretty close to like normal. It still may take a second to run the fuel through all the passages in the carburetor if they've evaporated off, but if you have an electric pump, this isn't really much of an issue. I think that's it. Hopefully I answered some questions that some of you may have had. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. I need those if I'm ever going to make it rich and live off of YouTube.